And welcome back. It's now 10 minutes away from 7 o'clock, and as promised before the break, we're sitting down to talk with the head of the Belize Territorial Volunteers, Will Mahir. Good morning, and welcome back to the show.
Good morning.
Now, Will, let's just talk a little bit about this entire evolution of this idea from its birth to where it is right now. How do you, as a person who had the initial idea, think that it has evolved with time?
Well, I always tell people that I remember when we were first talking about this is our country, we have to do something about it. Otherwise, you know, eventually the borderline will be moved all the way up to Belize City. So we have to start to really bring attention to what's the incursions that's happening. And I could remember the first time going there, yes, we had a bunch of people I talked to in Punta Gorda saying, yes, great idea, we're going. And when we got to the border, we looked around and there was 2 or 3 of us. But since then, it has really grown, and I am really pleased that the Belizeans and actually the people who fuel us, and I have to really mention the Belize City people who see this stuff on the news and they really encourage us to do what we are doing. And they really appreciate it. I mean, you grab a cab in town and the taxi guys yes, I admire what you guys are doing. You jump off the plane and the cargo guy is saying, yes, we are aware of what's going on and glad that somebody is stepping up to the plate. But, again, it's not just me, it's all the Belizeans that's involved. And even the Belizeans in the diaspora, we have Raymond, Izigir, these guys who always support us. They send boots, they send clothing for some of the villagers that goes with us, because trekking some of the mountains are rugged and you tear up your shoes and stuff.
Yeah,
so
you need the right gear.
Right. So a lot of the Belizeans, a lot of too numerous to mention, like Alex and these guys. I probably get in trouble for not mentioning some, but, they always help us out, send us stuff that keep us going to the border. As you know, it's not really that close, so it does cost to go out there.
Yeah, yeah. Now, this is something that even before you conceptualized the Belize Territorial Volunteers, in your own work in the South, you had been traveling the rivers and pretty much raising the red flag of the continuous incursions that were taking place. What do you think in terms of having now established the Territorial Volunteers and spread the level of awareness? What's your reaction knowing that many of the things you first saw still occur at this point?
Yeah, it's kind of depressing at times that you're out there and first you bring your attention to the illegal fishing, which is whereas you've been down there and see all the exploitation that's taking place, the gill nets, the miles and miles of gill nets that continue to be set at our river mouths, right next, less than 10 miles from Punta Gorda Fisheries Department or so. And those continue to happen, and we hope that those stop. I mean, it's depressing that year after year, it still happens. And also, you go to places like Halakta, where I was telling people, I could remember going there some years ago on Earth Day and hiking all the way to Santa Rosa. And it was under trees, sun hardly hit you, and now if you go there now, your entire journey will be under the sun because the trees are gone, they're missing. And to me, we and Belize...
Is it progress or problems?
It's problems because it's important to protect those watersheds. Those are those are up in the Maya Mountains, and if the trees are not there, the watersheds get damaged, and we are here boast of our reef. So it really, reef protection starts up in the Maya Mountains.
Now, we haven't had the opportunity to speak to you since the incident that happened. What was your major concern at that point? Do you think it was a fear that actually it would instill fear in people to not want to take the trek or do something significant as you had envisioned it?
Yeah. Yes, when the Guatemalans came in and basically hijacked or kidnapped our people, I think it definitely did a lot of damage to people who were thinking of going to that area. Because a lot of people is like, man, I really want to go, but I don't want to get kidnapped by Guatemalans. So from that aspect, definitely it has had an impact. But I tell people, this is our country. We have 8,867 square miles. And we as Belizeans should not be limited to where we can go in our country. This is our country. I don't think it's right for anyone to tell us that you should not go in certain area. It's like coming to Belize today and people tell you, well, you can't go into this area, go into that area because you will get hurt. I don't think we should live in a country like that. The whole reason for us fighting for a good country and living in harmony with each other is so that we could like be wherever we want in this country.
Now, I thought it was rather interesting because it was the Northern Territorial Volunteers, which is a chapter of the Belize Territorial Volunteers, that came to the South to go to Gracias a Dios, and you weren't on them on that particular trip. But you really have a lot of the knowledge as to how to maneuver and whatnot. There is still some question as to whether or not it was right what the Guatemalans did. Some will say the most important thing we should be paying attention to is the fact that the Guatemalans came over into Belizean waters to detain them, and then things unfolded as they did. What are the points that stick out to you the most based on what happened? Well,
based on what happened, the thing that stuck out to me the most is really when I got the call that those guys, and first of all, I couldn't be on the trip because I was in the midst of the campaign. It was 3 days before the campaign, so I didn't really go on that. And what stuck out in my mind is the fact that when I got a call and said, look, they're now tying up our boats to their boats, and I know how the mouth of that river is. It's very, very like what they say in Creole, wasi, which it's really rough. And I could remember some years ago, it's probably maybe over 20 years now, but the Guatemalan military had also gone close to one of their own boats, one of their ferry boats, and in that rough sea, it overturned, and over 100 people, I think, died right there in between Puerto Barras and Livingston. We didn't have the kind of technology those days, so it didn't make the news as much as it should have. But when you're going to tow a vessel, you have a vessel that's full with people and you're going to tow that, you are endangering the lives of those people. And I was thinking, man, I just hope something don't go wrong as they exit the mouth of the Sarsoon, because our people's lives was really in danger. Now that everybody is back and safe, you could look at it and say, wow, but really and truly, at that moment, the life of those people was on the line.
I've never thought of that particular aspect, but of course, because you are an experienced mariner, you know exactly the threats that were possible. And I know one of the things as well was that they were trying to transport them from the boat to the Guatemalan military vessel, which they abandoned, thankfully, because of the risks that were involved. Now, this obviously hasn't deterred you at all from proceeding with your visits to the border.
Yeah. I mean, since then, we've made several visits to the border. And I think that it is important for us as Belizeans, and I encourage every Belizeans to get involved. This is our country. We cannot allow our country to get smaller, and we have to take a stand. And that you don't have to live at the borderline to take a stand. Like I said, the energy that you get from the Belize City people, or look at those guys came all the way from Orange Walk, and there were some guys from Corozal. That was at least one guy I met from Corozal that came down. It shows love for a country, it shows patriotism, it shows dedication that you want to keep your country as is with all your square miles intact. So,
what is the reaction from people when they make the trek for the first time? Since you've been on so many of them and you've had you take a lot of the media persons who often it's their first time there, and you've had a lot of people not from Punta Gorda who take the trek as well.
Well, I'm sure you guys know Mike, and he came back, what, 5 pounds lighter, 10 pounds lighter. He took the trek. It is, during this time of the year, it's so beautiful to trek into the Maya Mountains. So it's kind of rewarding. A lot of people say, you know what, it's not as dangerous as it seems.
Yeah.
And when we go, we know where the borderline is at. We are careful not to cross into Guatemala. Although many times we encounter Guatemalans, and like I always say, we don't have a problem with the Guatemalan people. We have a problem when one country don't respect another country's border. Because a number of times we've met Guatemalans on the borderline, and they are very friendly to us.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I wanted to ask, because very often people think that, especially post that issue, that the Guatemalans would have gotten wind of it and would have been perhaps a bit more hostile at the border themselves. But that has not been the situation. No,
it has never really been the situation. And that's why I was really surprised, because even we have had Guatemalan military into Belize. I've sent the pictures up where the Guatemalan militaries are on Belizean soil or in Belizean waters. And even when they're there, they have never really been very aggressive. So I was surprised when they really jumped on our boat and basically kidnapped our people. That came as a total out of left field, they would say to us, because everybody that we've met over Guatemalans that we have met have been, for the most part, very friendly.
Yeah. And then to hear how things unfolded, what are some of the reasons that come to your mind? Because you have encountered many different Guatemalan militaries that have come to you, they've asked you, you've posted these pictures on a regular basis.
Sometimes I want to feel like it's just intimidation to keep us from going there. Constantly, the military guys was on the phone, so obviously they were taking instructions from someone. So I think that more, maybe, I don't want to point fingers, but it was more like an intimidation tactic. And again, right now, as you can see, when the OAS through the GOB put out that press release that we planted some coconut trees in Guatemala, I just thought that was really discouraging.
Well, let's talk about that issue.
Response from the government since that incident. What has been your feeling about it?
Well, I was very disappointed at the response from the government. I mean, this is our country. I believe, the amount of money that was handed out in ham and turkey over the Christmas holidays, if that alone, the money for that alone was given to the villagers along the borderline, the villagers are willing to keep the borderline clear. And if we could have kept the borderline clear when the British was here, if BEL could keep their lines clear, hundreds of lines, miles of lines, clear. Why is it that we can't keep our borderline clear? Between Gracias and Adios and Garbos Falls, it's probably 80 miles or so, or a little more. I mean, it's not impossible to do that. And so many villagers are willing. You could go to any of those villages, San Jose, San Benito, Poite, Dolores, Otosha, all those guys saying, we want to keep our part of the border clear. And they're willing to do that. And I mean, you could do that for less than the price of a SUV, or like I say, Christmas handouts, and people are willing to do it. So we have the power to do that.
Now, I want to bring it back to something you mentioned before, which was the report made by the OAS about the placement of the coconut trees you planted last year. Now, this has been an issue that actually the Minister of Foreign Affairs had mentioned a while back. He had warned that you would definitely need to be careful when you're going to the border because it's not clearly marked, as we all have been able to see. And those were parts of his concerns when you first started going to the border with your groups under the BTV. Now, to get the response from OAS saying, hey, guess what? The trees you planted last year were actually on Guatemala's side, and you have maintained that it is within Belizean territory. How do you respond to that? This is the Organization of American States, your government as well, reporting what they're saying.
Yeah. Again, I was really disappointed. And the purpose of the trip this Sunday was to go out there and show the world that, yes, we know where the borderline is at, and yes, we know that we planted those trees on the Belize side. But what was surprising was after that release came out, and we went back to verify for a third and fourth time, with our GPS, we brought our technician, and we plug in different GPS because they'll say, oh, well, some GPS are off. We brought multiple GPS, sent it to multiple different people who operate the GIS systems and stuff, and they all confirmed that we were on the Belize side.
You also take experienced BDF, retired BDF soldiers.
Yes.
So who else is manning your GPS? Because
we have trained BDF people, we have trained surveyors who have been with us, and we have a lot of students. And again, I want to, big up the UB students who are who actually have come on several of these territorial trips, and they have verified it. So I mean, it's hard to make a mistake.
So in your mind, it is absolutely untrue that the OAS is saying the coconut trees are planted in Guatemalan territory?
100% certain that they were not planted in Guatemalan territory. 100%.
And what do you think happened to those trees?
Yes, after we decided, okay, well, we're going to show you that those trees are on Belize, the trees mysteriously disappeared.
Uprooted?
Uprooted. And some people say, oh, well, cows eat it. No, cows didn't eat it. Because even if cows eat just the leaf, the root will still be there, the coconut will still be there in the ground, but they were not there.
So you planted some more.
So we planted some more, and we will keep on planting because it's important for us as Belizeans. And again, I want to take this opportunity to encourage all Belizeans to get involved in this movement. Like the Big A movement, they have been there. You've heard of the Big A group, and they've known about land acquisition. And we're thinking that, you know, Big A, they have made several trips. They have talked to villagers, and they've talked to people in Toledo, and we will be taking them along the borderline, because if the Guatemalan could come in and settle on our land, then I just think it's right that we take Belizeans to begin to take piece of those lands along the borderline. So Belizeans who are interested, who have not had lands or who want some land on the borderline, you should get involved with the BTV, and we'll probably, like I said, we've been consulting Big A to how they acquire their land.
So you're going to go and begin to have people live on the area?
I think that, yes, we need to do that.
So we need to have the plans that you have in place now in terms of what needs to be done next, instead of just the
going there.
trips.
Yes, we need to start giving out some lands along those borders, especially those areas that's, been cleared, and, Belizeans could go there and begin to do something with those lands.
Now, will you know that you can expect government opposition to that issue?
Yeah, and there was government opposition to the Big A occupying those lands along what is now Harmonyville, and it's now 1,000 Belizeans have had land for the first time. I think we could have 10,000 more Belizeans have land for the first time along those borderlines.
Now, in the issue, just with this very same Occupy the Border movement that you want to get started, the adjacency zone is something that is established by both countries at this point in time. Now, I know the first reaction can be, well, Guatemala is coming in, they're not respecting the adjacency zone. So are you now proposing that Belizeans do the very same?
Yes, because look, as you can see, the Belize side hardly have any kind of permanent structures, and look at the Guatemalan side. This road comes right up to the borderline, so they know where the borderline is at.
This is
right?
Guatemala.
Comes right up to the borderline, and this goes, there are many, this is only one of many communities. You go down towards Sarstoon, and there are more communities like that with roads pushing up to the borderline.
What's the numbers in terms of occupants of that particular village that we have there?
Okay, yeah, this is the Belize side, it's Guatemalan side. On the Guatemalan side, as you can see, there are lots of houses. There are probably thousands of people living there. And again, the amount of people that's pushing, I could remember going in there with a New York Times reporter probably 15 years ago. There was all that was tall forest. There was not even any road. And now there's like a road that actually goes into Belize's territory and back into Guatemala. I mean, I'll send you guys some that we did on Sundays. Even their electrical posts are on Belize side.
Now, this is no different from what we've seen in Chiquibol as well. We've seen in Chiquibol where they're building roads to the border.
Yeah.
And in terms of their farms and everything else, is it still believed that they actually come over to do their farming or even grazing of animals, etc.?
Well, yeah, I mean, you saw all those pictures that you saw yesterday, those guys that we took on Sunday, all those huge pastures, those are Guatemalan pastures in all that.
Yeah.
Those are Guatemalan pastures inside Belize's territory. No, my thing is, those are not Maya farmers, or those are not peasants that's just looking for a place to clear. Those are well-established Guatemalan citizens who are basically putting their ranch on the Belize side. Why do we continue to allow that?
This is one of the things that I have seen firsthand in going to Halakte, that you literally, from leaving from dump area, you start to see the denuding happening about halfway down. Yeah. And you can see there was once upon a time a clear difference between Guatemala side and Belize side. And you started to see the denuding happening a bit on the Belize side. So are you saying now that the majority of our forest areas are now being denuded?
All of this,
as well?
exactly, all what you're looking at right now, all of that. Wow. You see the Guatemalan cell tower? That's a Guatemalan cell tower. And all to the right of that tower are those cows. In fact, right in front of our eyes, I see the guy with the chainsaw there. That's a Guatemalan cutting tree on Belize's land, right in front of the cameras. So Belizeans have got to get alert, have got to begin to take back our country.
Now, when you encounter someone like that, do you have a conversation with them just cordially to explore? And is there a sharing of information, so to speak, on their part, as to ownership and all of that, or even whether they're across on Belize's side?
Yeah, and at times it has been mixed. In this particular instance, we've met guys who actually walk around with a 9mm on their side. Those are
You don't engage?
We've engaged, but you could see it's kind of tense. So, I mean, honestly, there is some tense moment. But then again, we've also met some Guatemalan farmers. So I could remember with a group of UB students, where the guy says, well, you know, if you say I'm in Belize section, then show me where's the Guatemalan section. I'll come back over to my side. But there's no clear line, so I don't know. My cattle is grazing, and if you say it's in Belize side, well, it's in Belize side. But there's no line to tell me that this is Belize and that is Guatemala. And that's all we're trying to do. Just like as you can see the fence post there, it's easy to do. We could delineate the border with coconuts, with madre cacao, with cacao plants, you know. I mean, it's so much things that we could use.
So we could use a natural vegetation for the border demarcation.
Definitely. I'm totally against any kind of concrete fence or zinc fence like that. But I think that we could use natural vegetation to delineate the border.
Now, when you take people now, post that incident, what's their reaction? Now, of course, you're going by land. You've not taken any major trek since then via the waters?
Yeah. No. We've gone to the Sarstoon since that, but we haven't gone up the Sarstoon River. I mean, going up the Sarstoon River is very expensive and it's costs a lot and it's very far. So you really need to be prepared for that. Since the Northern Territorial Volunteers went, we didn't go, but we're planning another trip up the Sarstoon coming up pretty soon, and we want to bring a number of boats, not just one boat. We want to bring a number of boats, so boat owners out there who wants that to go up the Sarstoon River should get in touch with us. We have a Facebook page that's, you know, you could ask to join the Facebook group and be a part of the Territorial Volunteers.
What's the distance that you're talking about when you make that journey up the Sarstoon to Gracias a Dios?
It's between 30 and 40 miles by boat, by water, because you go over 12 miles from Punta Gorda to the mouth of the Sarstoon, and then you can hook up, and then you go, it's maybe another 25 to 30 miles up the Sarstoon River. Okay.
Now, when you take this trip again, obviously it is most important for you to be able to, I mean, does it change how you will approach traveling to Gracias a Dios? Let me ask you that.
I don't think it will change. My thing is, I maintain that we're on Belizean side, we're on Belizean waters, we're on Belizean soil, and we as Belizeans should have the freedom of movement to move in whatever part of the country that we choose to move into. And again, I want to encourage that all Belizeans to not be afraid to go to the borderline. This is our country, and all, like I said, all 8,867 square miles belongs to us, and we should not be limited as to where we can go in our country. The more we limit ourselves, the more they will push in. That same Container Hill, the idea for those guys was to push until they get to that first creek, you know, then they would say, okay, the creek is the borderline. Then they push again until they get to another creek, and that creek be the borderline. Then we cannot allow that to happen. We have to maintain that we maintain our borders delineated, and Belizeans have got to visit the border and begin to demand from the government, because this is about a people thing. Just like how the Caneros could get together and demand things from the government, Belizeans could get together and demand that our borders be demarcated.
What do you want, or what is your hope in terms of relationship building with the government on this journey that you have decided to take in with the volunteers?
Well, like I was saying earlier, I took the former Prime Minister Manuel Esquivel to the borderline. I would like to take our Prime Minister to the borderline. When he was Prime Minister, when Manuel Esquivel was Prime Minister, yeah, I actually went with him to the borderline. I also would like to invite the Foreign Minister to come and see firsthand, because, you know, being in Belmopan and being in an office there, you're not seeing what's going on. It's when you get out there, then you get the sense of what is going on at our border.
Have you ever taken a government representative to the border recently?
Not recently.
Now,
but the mayor of Orange Walk went with us this past Sunday.
Yes.
And the deputy mayor of Orange Walk went with us this past Sunday. So, you know.
Now, what has been the engagement like? Because obviously, we know that there have been statements issued both by yourself and by the government. But has there been a concerted effort to actually gain an audience with both the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister to actually, one, explain to them the idea of actually taking that journey to the border, or just discussing further what would be the best way forward in terms of the Belizean interest, instead of this being a divisive issue, that it could be something that builds nationalism and patriotism?
Well, we've written to the Foreign Ministry, we have written to the BDF, and we haven't heard back from them. So it seems like they don't want to deal with us at the same time. Yes, we are open to discussions. We have to, our thing is that we have to maintain our borderline, no adjacency zone, right? Our borderline. And clearly, people know where it's at. If the OAS could have put out a statement saying that we were on Guatemalan side, they know exactly then where the Belizean side is at. So right there and then, they know where the borderline is at.
And the second part of that question is, and your engagement, or have you made any attempts to engage actually the OAS representatives in Belize to have a singular discussion, at least to start this?
Well, again, lots of our letters go unanswered. This weekend, we invited them to come out and see firsthand. You know, I think it would have been good to have the government representative and the OAS representative there, so that we could look firsthand what is taking place at our border. You know, it's very important. Yes, from a nationalistic standpoint, but also from an environmental standpoint. The degradation that is taking place is just out of control. And, you know, we have a lot of people, especially like the international NGOs, who raise money to save Belize's forest. Belize's forest is not being saved right now. So we need to do that. And again, our reef is our jewel. If we don't protect the forest, that reef will be a thing of the past. So, I mean, from a conservation standpoint or from a natural areas protection standpoint, it's very, very important that we maintain the forest on our side.
And the environmental groups who work down south, what has been their statement, especially when you look at it from that perspective, looking more at the environmental bent, given the fact that some people still see it as a potentially contentious kind of engagement that they are not sure they want to get involved with?
Well, I think that if you are a true environmentalist, or if you are true about conservation, if you are true about protecting our barrier reef, then you cannot be deterred by, I don't want to offend the government, or I don't want to offend the OAS. You are there and you are fighting to protect the reef, then this is part of reef protection. We've just had Reef Week. You can't protect the reef being out on the reef without wondering what's going on in the watershed. You know, so to tell you the truth, I am kind of disappointed in the reaction of the environmentalists in this country, seeing all this taking place. I know I'll take some fire from that because I consider an environmentalist myself. But these are the facts.
But you want to see essentially everybody come on board. That's
Definitely.
What you're asking for.
Yeah.
Now, I want to go back to the issue with the government one more time, just for the simple fact that the way it has been portrayed and the statements that have been made by the government is that they don't take the Belize Territorial Volunteers seriously. You know, they've used some very strong words in terms of the decision that you make going to the border. The foreign minister has warned that perhaps you could cause problems long before this actual incident happened with the Northern Territorial Volunteers. Do you think it's possible that you will be able to engage them, perhaps have joint efforts in going out along with the BDF at some point in time?
Well, I would hope that the government would take this thing seriously, because the government's responsibility is to protect this country. The BDF are trained to protect our borders, not to protect the streets of Belize City. So they are much more prepared and trained to protect our borders, not the streets of Belize City. So I would hope to see that there is more of a presence. The United States government just dumped millions of dollars, I'm not so sure of millions, but hundreds of thousands of dollars into military equipment, boats and whatnot for the BDF, and those boats should be stationed at the mouth of the Sarstoon River, and they are not there. They go there once or twice or maybe 3 times per month for a little bit of time, but they are not there. Those boats are parked in the BDF compound, and those boats really and truly should be down by the Sarstoon River.
Let me ask again, because at one point that entire discussion about the base, the military base that was being constructed by Guatemalans, and there had been talk that it had been halted because of everything else. What's the latest on that?
I don't think there has been much movement there. The Guatemalans have left. The base is half built, and that's where it stands. As I mean, the last time I checked, which was a few weeks ago, I didn't see any action going on out there. And again, this is something that this has been going on. This base has been being built for a couple of years, and until when Mose and them went out there and took the pictures, because I've been like saying this, but when they took the pictures and showed that, wow, the enemy is building your house, then something started to happen.
Now, it seems, and you've said it for yourself, that the Belize City people and also Orange Walk, the northern districts, have been the persons most engaged in the work of the Belize Territorial Volunteers. Have you reached out to other areas, perhaps getting into Cayo, into Stank Creek, and well, of course, you're based in PG.
Yeah.
What are the reasons you think that the majority of your support comes from the north, or the north half of the country, rather than those closer to the area? I
think the Norteños, given their history of fighting for their livelihoods in the cane industry, have made them like, you know, natural warriors, more so than other parts of the country. But so I think that was some of the motivation, that they're used to conflict, they're used to fighting for their rights, they're used to fighting to get something done. So that motivates them. But I also do get a lot of calls from people from Dangriga and other parts of the country, and I think it has to do a lot with economics. Moving down to Toledo is very expensive. Fuel and the movement of people is expensive, and I think that's a big constraint. If we had a way in which we could transport people to the border on a regular basis, I think that we would have a lot more support.
Now, in terms of the chapter development for the volunteers, how has that been going in terms of trying to establish chapters in municipalities all over the country?
Well, I think people take lead, and again, if you feel yourself to be patriotic and defend this country's border, I mean, people all over the world do that. They defend their country, and we as Belizeans, we need to do that. So if you're in Dangriga and you want to establish a chapter of the BTV, then do it. We didn't have to go to Orange Walk and organize. They organized themselves. They made us Northern Territorial Volunteers. You know, in Cayo, I challenged them. The marker at Garbutt's Fall is falling down, which is just feet away from the OAS office, and that's falling into the river. I challenge the people of Cayo. I don't think that it's right for me from Punta Gorda or the Northern Territorial Volunteers, but we would work with them, and we want to go with them, but I would like to see Cayo people, you know, calling out the Cayo people to really, your marker is falling down. This is your frontier. This is your borderline. Let's do something about it.
You know, one of the things I think is very important that you have continuously mentioned in media interviews, and to get your opinion on it, because you speak very often about going and protecting our borders and how unfair it is that Guatemalans come over. But you also are sure to maintain that this is not building antagonism towards Guatemalans, that you don't necessarily want to develop enemies, but you want to maintain your boundaries and still have a relationship. How do you keep the rest of the volunteers on the same track? Because this is a very easy way to build animosity. This is mine, that is yours.
Yeah, I think that we as Belizean people, we are friendly people. I think that we're loving people. We've found a lot of Guatemalans to be friendly. Of course, there are some that's not so friendly. But my thing is like, you know, we live in one world and we should live in harmony. You're my neighbor, I want to be the good neighbor. I want to be a good neighbor. I want us to live in harmony. I mean, I would like the time to come. Recently, I was in Europe. Well, not recently, but when I was in Europe, I flew from Poland to, I think, Belgium, and didn't even have to go through customs because there was, you know, and I think that we could get to the time, but then you don't see the Polish people going across the border to Germany or whatever. We just need to maintain what is Belize belong to Belize. What is Guatemala belong to Guatemala. But I think we should live in harmony with each other.
Okay, and I definitely want to find out a bit more about this Occupy the Border movement that you want to get started. How far are you with the plans for this?
Well, like I said, we've had like some serious consultations with the Big A group, and we will definitely in the Toledo district, we will continue to meet people and gather at the border and begin to do some squatting at the border like the Big A group did. And again, I want to also mention, as you know, that I ran in the election, politics have nothing to do with it. When I'm out there, I'm a Belizean. I'm not a political person when it comes to that. Yes, sure, I run for office and that kind of stuff, but when I go to the border, we have people from all different parties go there. We go there as Belizeans, not to try and promote any political party, but as Belizeans.
Just to follow up on that, what are, have you consulted with the Mayan communities? Because we know their issue of the communal land rights is one that they are still battling at this point in time.
Yes, and we want to continue the discussion. I've brought it up with them, and do you know that the alcaldes along the borderline are actually intimidated by the Guatemalans? They are scared to meet with us because they think that if they meet with us, the Guatemalans will come out after them when we leave. Actually, which is sad, that there are times when we go into the Mayan communities, the alcalde leaves town. Not because he doesn't want to deal with us, because he's afraid that the Guatemalans will see him dealing with us, and then they will come after him after we left. That's how bad it is. That's how bad it is in some of those villages. And I think that the Mayan organizations have got to do their part, because if Belizeans go into these communal lands right now and start clearing or whatnot, we'll end up in court. I believe that the Maya organizations need to challenge the Guatemalans who are occupying their communal lands. And that is what's happening right now.
But continuing with the idea of occupying the border, how do you know that it won't cause a problem with the Mayan communities?
Well, I mean, there are thousands of acres that's been cleared so far, and I haven't really seen an official response from the Mayan organizations referencing the deforestation or the occupation of Mayan communal lands. And I believe that the Mayan organizations who are fighting for communal land rights need to take the stance and say, hey, you're on our lands. And that's what's happening in the Jalacte and San Vicente area and the Poite area and the Dolores area right now.
And in terms of your engagement, it has been on a one-on-one basis, not with the Alcalde Association or anything like that, to say, how do we actually fight to preserve these lands as Maya communal lands?
Yeah, it has been, we have met with, informally, with, mentioned it to a couple of the Mayan leaders, and we were supposed to meet with the Alcalde Association, and we never really got to that, but you know, the hope is that we could engage them. But I could tell you that there's lots of fear right now within the alcaldes who live along the borderline, because they are seen as the head of that village. So if we go and push to get the line demarcated, some Guatemalan landowner or rancher will be displaced, and those guys are actually afraid of those guys.
So what's in the immediate future for the BTV?
For the BTV, we encourage Belizeans to get involved, continue to get involved. We want to use some of that Harmonyville strategy, what they use. Now, like I said, 1,000 Belizeans now have land that have never had land. If land is along the borderline, then Belizeans need to have land along the borderline. And we need to go there and occupy some of those lands and delineate our border and live in this country peacefully and in harmony with our neighbors. I mean, that's our thing. We, at no time, want a conflict with Guatemala. I think that going to the ICJ is a waste of time. We should never even consider going to the ICJ. We already know where our borders is. What we need to do is continue to build trade relations with Guatemala, cultural exchanges and that kind of stuff. That you know, I mean, right now, because of people like Darius Avila, there is like this Battle of the Drums. And every year we get groups from Guatemala that participate in this cultural extravaganza. So I think that, you know, we could use those ways to settle this dispute. There's no need to go to the ICJ.
All right. Well, Will, we want to thank you very much for joining us this morning, and we'll continue to stay in touch and to see how the work of the BTV continues to unfold.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Always good to be in Belize City. I love being in the city. It's just like a great place to wake up to, you know, Caribbean.
One of these days we'll meet you in PG. That's what we'll do.
Thank Belizeans for supporting the BTV and encouraging us. It's what fuels us.
All right. We're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, it will be to talk about World Tuberculosis Day. We'll be right back after these messages. Don't go anywhere. Open Your Eyes continues in a few.